All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Word with Ty Brownlow. I am your host, Ty Brownlow, and remember, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. And today, ladies and gentlemen, got a very special guest for you. I'll give you a couple of words about my guest. Therapist, destigmatizing, writer, host. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, therapist, destigmatizing, writer, host, Cecille Ahrens. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Ty or T, for having me.
No problem, no problem. Either one, hey, Ty, T, it doesn't matter. Either one, it doesn't matter. Okay. Um, first and foremost, as I said, I want to thank you for being on the show. Today, we're going to talk about something I think is very important, very key, and I don't think we really take time to really think about this as much as we do on a normal everyday basis, but we're going to talk about doom scrolling. And I know people out there are like, Ty, what are you talking about, doom scrolling? I don't even know what that is. Well, this is why you tune in, so you can get educated about doom scrolling and the effects behind doom scrolling as well. So Miss Ahrens here, man, not only is she a LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. You also are I'm sorry.
It's the other letters after my name, so to speak, is CAP, and that basically stands for Certified Employee Assistance Professional. So that's when I was doing a lot of consultations with different companies and organizations to help them with violence prevention and threat assessments.
Okay.
So.
Well, we actually have one of those questions towards the end. So I'm glad that okay, all right. Okay. So let's just dive right in. Let's just get right into it. So let's talk about the effects of the pandemic. So the effects of the pandemic, I mean, it has many people on edge.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, how can others get a hold on their anxieties and their traumas if they can't afford it?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's a lot of practical tips that people can start to use now to cope now. And it may not be, anything fancy, but that's probably why, some people don't do it because it's nothing fancy. It's simple. Exercise, watching your diet, right? Watching the kind of media you're consuming and the type of media and how much media you're consuming. Okay, so that kind of ties into doom scrolling. Mm-hmm. Getting outside, getting some vitamin D. More and more research is coming out on vitamin D, especially with COVID and why it affects people of color the most. Because their research is showing that there's a link to vitamin D deficiencies, especially for people of color. Think about it. Like, I'm Asian American. I don't drink milk. I mean, right? I didn't grow up with a lot of vitamin D type of foods.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm digressing there a little bit, but stuff like that, going outside, nature. There's all this research now on greenery and how when you look at something green, especially nature, it really does calm down the nervous system.
Really?
Yeah. And we know that innately, right? Like when you walk outside and you're around nature, don't you get that sense of like,
you know what? Now I will say, if I'm like in the field or if I'm, like walking across the field to go play softball or something of that nature, I do feel a calm as I'm walking across the field. I don't know what's going to happen when I get there, to the actual like dugout and the diamond itself,
Well, that's a different activity then. That's more sports.
That's a different activity, but no, pretty much to your point. But yes, there is a calming, just being in nature itself. But yes.
Okay. And looking at your immediate environment, I just did a piece not too long ago about the effects of your home environment on your mental health. So clutter, disorganization, dirty dishes, believe it or not, right? Unmade beds. Because there's more stuff for us to process when things are disorganized. It's very visually stimulating and frustrating, right? For most people, hopefully. And if a space isn't very inviting, and it doesn't create kind of this sense of peace or calm in you, you tend to spend less time in that space. So if your space is like that throughout the house, then your house now also has become a stressor, right?
Okay, so now I find that very interesting because you sort of, segue into what I want to talk about now. In the article you wrote for Business Insider, you do talk about some of the things that could be causing stress, in a home environment, and you do talk about clutter, insufficient lighting. We don't really pay attention to the lighting in the house, This I found very interesting, and I want to dive into this a little bit more, but outdated and worn out items.
Yeah.
And household sounds, background, that I pretty much know, but we can dive into that too. But outdated and worn out items, how can things like that become a stressor to us?
So similar to what I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, if a space is not inviting to you, right, and it's not creating positive associations, you tend to spend less time there. So if you see something, right, nice and clean and comfortable, you associate it with positive things, and therefore you end up getting positive emotions out of it. But if you see something, right, run down, it's uncomfortable, maybe it's dirty, you're kind of doing this because it's dirty over there. Like it's a negative experience, more often than not when you have a lot of that going on in your house. And it just can be as simple as cleaning something up, right? Or covering it up, or buying something secondhand if you can afford it, and letting go of that thing that maybe is no longer serving you.
Okay, now, so that's what I sort of wanted to hit on a little bit there, because we don't talk about this a lot, but old items such as that, sometimes we don't want to throw things like that away or get rid of them because of the attachment that came along with it. Whether it be a time in your life, a person, what happened,
The worst thing that is hoarding. That's kind of the extreme, right?
Yeah.
Manifestation of that.
So what about insufficient lighting? Like, what type of lighting would you say should be, illuminated through the house, in order for us to, be in a better mood?
So they say natural light is really helpful, right? Because again, nature. Green and white light is known to be better for our mental health, better for boosting mood.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, I'm not saying it's one size fits all, but I think the best thing to do is when you're in a space, pause for a second and go, what vibe do I get in this space? How do I feel when I'm in this space? Because that's going to be a better predictor is how you feel in that space. You might have a black wall, but you might really dig it because there's all these things in the room that really like fill you up and light you up, and motivate you. Then that's okay. Keep the black wall, right?
Right. But if there's nothing else in there but that black wall, you might
want to consider, new colors, bright colors, so in therapy spaces, if you look at hospitals, they're usually lighter pastel colors. And that's for a reason, because studies have shown that kind of environment actually helps healing. It helps recovery because people are in a calmer state.
Yes.
So that's the mind-body connection. It's a powerful thing.
Okay, so mind-body connection, trauma, almost in a sense. My next question to you is, how can trauma be passed from generation to generation if not recognized as such?
Oh my God.
That's just, look, we can come up with numerous examples of this or what have you, but for the most part, if we don't even recognize what it is, because for us it's normalized, how can we even
how can you interrupt that?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you don't know, then you can't, right? That's why education is key. That's why we have to, as a community, start talking about this stuff and putting some education in there and, recognizing it earlier on. So there's counseling now for kids, right? Like, at least now we're starting to recognize it in our school systems, and normalizing therapy, especially for our communities,
Yes.
where we, I'm still trying to talk some of my family members into therapy, right? Like,
well, but you know what? You hit on something, okay. You hit on something very key. Now, I think in our age range, okay, going to see a therapist, that's not really unheard of. That's not really taboo. But for the elders, maybe my mom and dad, definitely grandparents, and their elders or what have you, there's no such thing as, what? Me go to talk to who about what? Oh, no.
Figure out your own problems.
Yeah, right. You need to figure out your own problems. And, it's that or what have you.
Church.
Oh, that's a whole nother show, but we ain't gonna talk about that. That's a whole nother show right there.
Well, in my culture, it's like, what do you want to eat? You need to just eat that away. Just have some lumpia,
Okay, so, man.
So that's how you pass the generational trauma, right? We're joking aside, but that's how you do it. You do it effortlessly because you don't even know you're doing it. Mm-hmm. So you just keep passing on the message down the line. And then if nobody interrupts that generation, they pass it on to the next generation. That's why I'm so passionate about this, because I always say it only takes one person in the system to break the pattern for an entire generation, conceivably, or at least for that person's generation. If they choose to have children, right? They can at least break it for themselves and their children and their children's children.
Okay. I like it. I like it. I'm for it. I think there needs to be more of it. And seriously, like, we need to normalize it to the point where it's just like second nature. Oh, I'm going to see my therapist today. Oh, you know what, man? You know what? We got family therapy today. Everybody, like, let's not be late. Let's not do this. Look, So
that's why Papillon.
Hey,
that nonprofit, I'm so into it because, look, we have a doctor, right? The day we're born, we get a doctor.
True.
About 1 or 2 years old, you get a dentist if you're lucky, right?
True.
Then you start to get an optometrist.
Mm-hmm.
You get all these other things, but then, if you get a therapist, we don't think of it as an essential part of health, and we're hoping that that's going to change.
Well, it is going to change, and basically, we're going to talk about some of the change that's going to happen, because you hit on Papillon and nonprofit earlier. We're going to get to that, but let's just talk a little bit more about this Doomscroll, okay?
Yes.
So, in today's society, or the temperature of today's society, we have a whole bunch of stuff going on. But now, basically, I was reading some of the articles, or some articles that you were featured in, and as far as doom scrolling, basically it says that we are evolutionary wired to screen for and anticipate danger, okay? Along with that, which is, why keeping our fingers on the pulse of bad news may trick us into being prepared. Now, you deal with PTSD and trauma a lot. You deal with anxieties, you deal with mood orders and all that. Let's tie all this into Doomscroll, because I don't really think people really pay attention. Man, your day can go off balance just like the first minute you wake up, because we're trained and we're geared to grab these and check whatever it is that's going on.
This is the new newspaper.
Yes.
I used to reach for the newspaper.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, but what's on the newspaper? Bad news. All the stuff that went wrong that day, the day before, right? It's all about bad news. There's no newspaper for good news.
No. Where's the good newspaper?
Right?
Right. Where are those? No. But okay, so like,
because it's not going to be interesting. No one's going to want to read about it because of that thing you just read that I wrote, that we are wired to screen for danger, right? Because we feel like we need to protect ourselves from what we think might be coming.
Okay, but notice
But
what you're saying.
we're not in the jungle anymore, right? This is very primal behavior, very caveman-like behavior. We have different threats now, but our behaviors are still like, oh, give me that. What else is going on?
Okay.
Oh, you're gonna get, you know?
But I mean, it sends you down this rabbit hole sometimes that you really can't come back from. And, you know, it starts to shape and form ideas, you know, that in certain circles, you can be a very dangerous person, you know? And
that's how radicalization happens, right? That's how extremism happens, is you get fed enough this information, and then if you have enough vulnerabilities like trauma, you know, all the stuff, right, that you've gone through as a person, and you have enough kind of grievance behind you, and then you're reading this stuff, it's a cocktail. So that's why it's so important that people become more mindful of what they're reading. That's why I said that in the beginning, especially if you're already feeling on edge, that stuff is not going to help you. It's going to make you feel worse, you know? So you need to limit it. You need to start connecting with how it's actually making you feel. And you need to put it down, right? Like do a scale level on yourself, like 0 to 10. 10 is like, you really crossed the line then. But if you're starting to get to like a 3 or 4, that's a sign to like, let me put this down.
Okay.
You know, let me pause, or let me change the channel, right?
Yes. Yes.
If you really want to watch something like such as the news, or, you know, limit it. Have some boundaries around it. Like, okay, I'm gonna watch the evening news from 6 to 7 or whatever, 2 hours, right? Like, but it's about how it makes you feel. You have to we get so disconnected from our bodies. That's the problem with our culture these days. It's always like, we don't know what it's like to be still anymore, right? Because we have to keep feeding ourselves with something because of this device. And I actually kid to my husband, I'm like, I don't think this is what Steve Jobs intended. I do not think he was like, let me create a device that's going to make people, you know, agitated, depressed, addicted. I hope not.
Well, I hope not, but okay. So let's really talk about that now. You know, like, there's a movie, Blade Runner, the original Blade Runner with Harrison Ford. Ryan Gosling's cool too, but I'm just saying, the original Blade Runner with Harrison Ford. And I talk about this a lot, and how today's society sort of reminds me of that movie. You know, even though you don't have like well, in a sense, we are sort of like mindless cyborgs moving through, because we're being controlled by this.
Yes.
And as you said, the true self doesn't come, you know, forward. And sometimes when we run across a person who's not like our normal day or what have you, we tend to be on a defensive. Now we're a little anxious or what have you, because this person isn't moving at the medium that I'm used to moving at, you know? And so
and if you leave the country, just a point I want to make about that, if you leave the country, right, if you've been fortunate enough to go on vacation outside of the United States, you're going to see, it's a glaringly obvious how different of a pace we've lived in compared to other cultures. You know, I remember I was in Australia one time, and I was like trying to get my coffee, and it was like taking too long for me, right? And I was on vacation.
Right.
And my husband at the time was like, what are you in a rush for? Where are you going? Like, just wait for the damn coffee. I was like, you're right. It's just, I'm so used to this. And we reinforce that in the United States, like immediate gratification, right? Look at Amazon. When do you want it? You want it today?
Yeah, I do.
Tomorrow?
Well, no, I want it today. I want it today. I mean, if I have Prime, I will get it today. So
Yes. Yes. So there's positives to it, but there's a danger as well. There's a trade-off to all of this immediate gratification. And then the internet is that way, right? You want something, you look it up, it's right on your fingertips. You want porn, you look it up, it's right there.
And it's, hey.
For good reasons and bad reasons.
There you go. There you go.
Sorry,
so, I about this. so let me ask this question. As far as the future of mental health, you know, like with COVID and everything else that's going on now, where do you think the future of mental health is going?
So I think there are a lot of efforts now around destigmatization. I think Meghan Markle talking about it too, probably, you know, and other celebrities talking about it, I think really helps with that effort. We still need, though, to really improve the access to care in this country. Okay, the making it affordable and accessible for people to get help. I really believe it's a two-pronged thing. Like, we have to help make it okay and normalize these conversations, right, in the broader culture, but we also have to make it affordable for people, you know, and not just people who have who can afford to pay out of pocket. They shouldn't be the only ones who get quality care. Right? They shouldn't be the only ones who get to go to a Betty Ford clinic, you know, and get that kind of quality care. Like in medical care, it's not that disparate, you know, it's not, there's an equity, but it's not as obvious.
Okay.
As far as where mental health. So that's where the problem, I think, also lies, is the access to it, and just the way we think about it. Like,
okay,
you're probably not familiar with this, and I don't expect you to. Like, so with mental health, if we build insurance companies, we have to give you a diagnosis.
I didn't know that.
Why? Otherwise, what are we treating you for? What are we treating you for, right? So even the words, even the language, we call it treatment, we call it diagnosis. I mean, and I get that, but there's a danger again if you're not, you know, if you really like don't think about that deeply. That's the danger, is we're following kind of a medical model of care, which is there has to be a diagnosis, this is the treatment, blah 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 blah. So what I'm proposing is very radical, but I think we need to change some of those words and the criteria. Like, why do we have to wait for somebody to have a diagnosis to get care? Why can't they just be like, hey, I'm just starting to feel some stuff, I don't know what it is. And why can't, you know, they reimburse at that level where we're like, they don't have a diagnosis yet. And that's a good thing.
True. Well,
right?
Okay, but let's stay on that. You know, like some companies or, you know, some jobs, hey, you know what, take a mental health day. Okay, cool. I'll take a mental health day, but you're not really like, what's really behind it? Like, are we really feeding, like, are we really getting into like what's really wrong? Like, I know you say you deal with like tension at the
workplace
or what have you. And, you know, you have these things sometimes where, you know, issues are really not being dealt with and they're being brushed aside because a job or a mission or what have you has to get done, which is understandable. But also at the same time, the people who are running this process need to be in the best, you know, mental health as possible. And if they're not, and then they're having these triggers, and then you have incidences on a job, whereas people are getting into it, people are getting hurt. Now, you know, you may have a delay in a project itself and, you know, all these other lawsuits or what have you, which, you know, which in case is going to like, hey, we need more training. We need more sensitivity training, which sometimes, you know, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
These companies need as much training as possible because they're still living in archaic times. I mean, they're still living back whenever, you know, they're just not current. They're just not current to what's going on now. So I had to talk to you. Okay.
Well, mental health day, the fact that you even knew about that, right? That's progress. Because we were having mental health days in mental health, you know,
Well,
meaning like we
yeah,
would, that was a normal part of the benefit packages. You can get a few mental health days a year, right? But if back in the day, like if you said that in a non-mental health environment, they're like, what do you mean mental health day? What the heck are you talking about?
right. Like what? You just want a day off, and then and then your issues are not perceived as, okay, I may need
legitimate enough,
There you go. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So thank you for all that, and no, seriously, like, that I feel, we got, some progress, and, we got the people, educated a little bit more, on mental health and some of the things that happen as far as the Doomscroll. So people, man, whatever you got to do. Sometimes this is what I do. If I know I'm gonna wake up, which I know I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna go towards the phone, you know what? I'll go look at shoes. Because you know what? Shoes is my happy place. Even though I don't plan on buying any of them. But you know what? Hey, you know what? Those shoes look real nice. Okay. I may spend a minute or two. I think I really have something else to do. I really need to be focused on the other things I need to, be doing. So,
that's good advice, because then you start your day on a kind of calmer note, right? Because what happens to our bodies when you start your day like that, you've already amped your nervous system up from the get-go, and so you're already what we call hyper aroused, depending on what kind of impact that article or whatever, that image, that trigger did. And then now you have to spend the rest of your day, hopefully not the rest of your day, but some people have to spend the rest of their day, especially with all the political stuff that was going on.
Come on.
I help people come down from that, because they're up there all day, depending on the nature of the trigger.
But now, okay, so let's talk about, real quick. All right, so we know that it's going to be on TV. They're going to run it on all the news stations. You're going to see it 4, 5, 6, 7, 20 times tonight, and then you're going to see it 40 times tomorrow, and then someone's going to call you on the phone. Hey, did you know da 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 da? Like, how can, like, it creates a storm of negativity. Like, how can, and I don't want to block friends out. I don't want to block loved ones out, but I know what's going to happen when, I pick up this phone and I say hello. It's not even going to be hello, hey, how are you? Did you hear about what happened? Da, 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 da. And they're doing this and they're doing that. Da, 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 da. I'm like, oh my God. Like,
yeah. It's okay to have boundaries. I tell folks, like, you got to know your limits. You don't have to answer every call. You're not on demand. Like, you can't be available like a remote control,
Yeah, you're not on demand, people. Okay.
You're not cops,
You're not a movie, all right? You just can't turn it on and I'm just going to start playing, all right? No, I'm not on demand.
It's okay to have limits. Yeah, and that also means, like, when you're watching these things, this is what I mean by have a mindfulness about it, have a connection with your body about it. If it's getting to the point where you're irritable, you're negative, right? You're starting to really, like, have dark views of people.
Yes.
That is not healthy.
Yes. Okay. Hey, not healthy people. Look, seriously, I'm going to tell you what you should do, okay?
What?
You should go to Business Insider, all right? You should look at the article, All right. Yes. Go to Business Insider. Look at the article that she wrote. Okay. About, things that can cause you stress throughout your home. She's been in Vogue. She's been on PBS. She's been all around. Trust me. I did all the snoop. Okay. All right. She even has a website that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. But before we talk about this website, we're going to talk about this podcast. Get Mental Podcast. Tell us about it.
So Get Mental is obviously, because of the name, a mental health podcast. I wanted it to feel fun and light and inviting, because we talk about some serious stuff, but I really do try to keep it light and hopeful as well. Keep it balanced, right? And so it really started because I was really starting to get upset about all the school shootings when children were pretty much getting killed. Yes. I mean, sorry, hopefully no one's getting triggered by that word in schools. And, we all have our line, right? As far as like how much of this stuff you can take. And that was mine. I was like, oh no, now you're hurting the kids. No. And I really felt helpless about it. I'm like, what can I do? What can I do knowing what I know about why these things happen? So yes, the gun laws are a big part of that, but also mental health. That's a huge component as well as to why someone would do something like that, right? So I was like, that's it. I'm just going to start a podcast and start talking about different types of mental health issues and how to get some help and give people hope and destigmatize therapy and normalize these conversations. And so that's really how it began for me. And then here we are.
Okay. All right. So where can we find the podcast? Where can we listen?
So you can listen to it anywhere you listen to your podcast: Apple, Spotify, Anchor.
Okay, all right, okay. All right. Get Mental podcast, people. Get mental, all right?
Get mental, and our hashtag is because we all have issues.
Yes, we do, okay?
It's true,
yes.
We all have issues.
Well, I know more than others, but yes, yeah. I just learned
that was really it. That was my message. That is my message, is to normalize it. This isn't about an expert talking about it. Yes, I'm going to bring in my knowledge, but we're all in this together, and we all hurt, and we're all working something out in this lifetime, right? Nobody's a finished product.
That's true.
That's really the spirit of the podcast.
Okay, see, spirit. I like that. Okay, punchy people. Okay, punchy. I like it. So now let's talk about this nonprofit, Papillon. Yes.
Papillon. Yes. Papillon. Papillon Wellness Inc. So it's Papillon is French for butterfly. I love butterfly. Okay. Butterflies. I love French things. I don't know why. Maybe my past life I was there. I don't know. But I was like, I'm just going to trust that. So Papillon. So it's a nonprofit that we're in the middle of a launch, and it's something that, again, I thought about how can we make mental health. So it's innovative in that we are really not only trying to serve the underserved, right? Because typically nonprofits are about the low socioeconomic income status people. This isn't about that. We're also going to include middle income earners, because middle income earners always kind of get screwed. They're in the grave. They don't make enough money to do all these things, but they make too much to get certain benefits.
True. That is true. True.
And a lot of times, even if they have insurance, they have really high deductible plans. You can relate.
I can relate to that.
So it's not that they're gonna get it for free, but they're gonna get it for a much lower rate, right? So a certain level of income will have no charge, right? And then a certain bracket, you might have a $20 charge. Well, $20 is better than $150.
Well, yeah.
Or a high copay, a high deductible plan. So that's one way we're trying to be innovative. The other way is to also not make our care dependent on a diagnosis, kind of like what we talked about a few minutes ago, right? That we're going to break away from that model of you have to have what we call a DSM diagnosis, which is basically, you've heard of that. This is the diagnostic, criteria manual.
The DSM-5, there used to be 4, but now there's 5.
Now there's 5, yep. So the DSM-5, usually we have to go through here and give somebody a DSM-5 code to submit to the insurance companies. Well, I'm like, what if they really don't meet criteria? Then we don't do it. Why do we have to do it? It's kind of unethical, right? It's like, I don't want to like make something up here, you know? And why is that necessary?
True.
You know, to get paid, to get reimbursed, right? So we're gonna try, if we get, you know, people to support us on this kind of new way of doing mental health care, that's gonna be the goal. Is no, we're not gonna wait for this person to meet criteria for a diagnosis. We're gonna try to break the pattern at the early stages of pain.
Disruption.
Yes.
I should have used that word. Disruption, ladies and gentlemen. Disruption. We're all about that over here. But in a positive
way. Yes. And then the other vision we have is to change the space of mental health.
Okay.
So when you go to, I don't know if you've ever been to like a rehab facility or an inpatient psychiatric facility.
Nah, I can't say I have. I can't say I have.
Well, not necessarily for you, but for a family member, you know, or on TV, right? What is your image?
Yes.
When,
now, you know what? Now usually if I watch something on TV and they're showing, it's all dark, gloomy, and they have these big doors that open and boom, I'm like, yo, I don't even know if I don't even know.
People are in gowns, right? Yeah. They're kind of like in these very sterile, concrete.
Everything's stale.
Depressing.
Yeah.
And with mental health, why are we giving people our most, you know, kind of sick people in a way, right? That kind of environment, when we already know, just like that Business Insider article says, that doesn't help.
It doesn't help. No.
Right? And it's destigmatizing all over again, right? And it's demoralizing. But if you go to a hospital, especially now the modern ones, they're nice, they're modern, they got nice little pastel colors, some have flowers. I mean, you know, where I gave birth, it was like a hotel room. I literally had a phone and I would just call them and give them my order from a menu. And they just deliver it to my house. Why can't we have...
Like, wait a minute, am I having a child or can I just get this, you know, hamburger delivered here? Yeah, you know, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Seriously, you know, and a lot of medical facilities are starting to kind of upgrade and do that. But mental health, no. I mean, if you go to an outpatient facility, meaning if you go to a therapist in private practice, a lot of us do up our space where we really try to make it therapeutic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know why, for some reason, the higher the level of care you need, the worse the environment seems to get.
And okay, so, you know.
So we're gonna change it at Papillon.
Okay, all right, thank you. Change it up.
We want people to have positive associations. We want them to go, I need help, I need therapy, and you know what? Papillon, that's right, it looks good, it makes me feel good, I feel calm, and when they walk in there, we want them to get that effect of like, this isn't so scary. I want them to have like their nervous system to come down a notch when they enter through the doors.
Yes. Okay.
Safety is key if we're gonna work with people on, right? Talking to us about their innermost fears and struggle.
I mean, you're talking safety, mental safety, emotional safety, you know, things like that. Yeah. I mean, you know, like you want that coming through the door and you want that to be inviting. So inviting, we can use that word as well. Inviting. All right. There you go. All right. I like it. So before we get out of here, before I ask the last question, let me ask, you know, sometimes in any industry, you know, it doesn't matter if it's healthcare, it doesn't matter, you know, cooking or what have you, when you want to disrupt the current mode of what's going on, what's usually one of the biggest drawbacks, you know, like getting people to switch over?
Money. Resources. I don't know if I answered your question correctly, but resources is power.
Yeah.
A lot of decisions get made by people who have the resources, right?
You've answered the question. You've answered the question. Because at the end of the day, like, I mean, what else is there? Like, I have the money, I have the resources, I can actually make this happen. So why not just make it happen? I choose.
If Bill Gates had this idea, guess what? He could make it happen tomorrow. You know?
Because he has the money and resources and, you know, everything else to make it happen. So yeah, you know, yeah, that's true. All right.
I'm just keeping it real, right? Like that's a big part of why some of our social change, I believe, has been slow. Because that's not where we've put our resources in, right? We put it into other things. We put it into engineering and the sciences, which is all great, right? NASA, all of this, but let's balance it out. And also put enough money on mental health.
Because at the end of the day, I think it all balances on mental health and, you know, to do any of those things in all those fields. So you have a sharp mind, you know, to go into outer space.
Right. And if you don't have a healthier mental health, sorry, I thought my pen was if you don't want to have a healthier mental health, right, it goes back to that very basic question you asked me in the beginning, which is, then how do you stop the pattern? How do you break the pattern?
How?
You know, violence, that's all part of generational trauma.
Yes.
You know, gang memberships, drug addiction, you know, that's all part of generational trauma.
Well, I mean, as I said, people, you know, Miss Ahrens also deals with PTSD, you know, and trauma, anxiety disorders, mood disorders as well. These are just some of the things, all right? She actually has a whole list. So we're going to talk about this website and how can people find you and get your services.
Thank you. So I have a website called CecilleAhrens.com. That is CECILLE. And then my last name is AHRENS, CecilleAhrens.com. And there you'll see like a little information about our private practice. There's 6 of us in the office. And then there's information about the Get Mental podcast. And there's information about this mental health show that I co-produced with Miss Gabby Pickens called Life with Cecille Show, where we talk to 4 people in the mental health community here in San Diego that are also trying to do some disruptive, progressive work in the mental health space. So that's really great. But you can also just go to Instagram, transcend Instagram _Inc. No, sorry, transcend _therapy _Inc. Transcend Therapy Inc. Or Get Mental.
Okay.
Or transcendtherapyca.com. There's many ways to find me.
She said there's many ways. No, I love it. I mean, look, let me just say, I'm into what you're doing now. Okay, as I said, I've snooped around. I went on the Facebook page. She was on the Facebook. She was, talking about, you know, therapy and how sometimes, you know, it's not seen as something, you know, needed. But as you said before, you have all these other things. You're born with a doctor. You have a obstetrician for your eyes. You have a foot doctor if something's wrong with your foot. That's cool. But when we talk about therapy, it's like, ooh.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, no. You know what? My stock just fell. Oh my God. You know what? Hey, I think there's a, you know, elephant on a roof you need to go, you know, pick up or something like that, you know, but there's always these other excuses, but the right excuse is to, hey, get involved. Something's wrong, get it, focus, get it looked at, know what's wrong, know what's going on with you so you can break these cycles of, you know, abnormality, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes that's what it is, you know? So let's just break these cycles, people, break the bad cycles. Now, Miss Cecille Ahrens, I have to ask this question because this is the question that my show is known for, but I'm going to present it to you. What is the one word that best describes you and why?
That's a tough one.
Well, I mean, look, I have a few.
I feel like I'm in therapy now.
Okay. No therapy over here. No therapy.
I think I would say fears.
Okay, yeah. I would say that too. Well, I wouldn't say fears. I would say something else, but yeah. Let's go with fears. Why fears?
What would you say?
I was going to say badass. Like
badass. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean,
I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Like, not in an egotistic way, like fierce in the sense of I just go for things that I really believe in. You know, I'm not afraid to fail. I'm gonna put in the time, resources, and energy that I can, you know, for a good cause, especially if I really believe in it. And I happen to really believe in mental health and trauma intervention and breaking cycles of pain and trauma. Like, so much of our problems, it's the single most important problem I believe that we are facing. And so much of our problems stem from that: racial trauma, right? Economic trauma.
Yes.
Political trauma.
Yes.
You know, if you really understand, if people really had a better understanding of trauma, you would know exactly what I'm talking about, because there's little traumas and there's big traumas, you know, but the cumulative effects of that, even when you're just watching something, you know, on TV, the repetitive images of death and violence is traumatic to us. It hurts us. It's not harmless. It affects our psyches.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, but that's the word I can think of for myself.
Okay. All right. Fierce. She said fierce. I'm gonna go with badass because she's badass and she's a boss. All right. Because she's slaying every day. All right. So no, because you have to look, well, from my point of view, you know, you're very passionate, as you said before, about mental health. You set up so many. First and foremost, as I said, people, if you just have time to go on the website to check her out, or if you're on Facebook, go to the Facebook page, check her out.
That's right. We have a Facebook Get Mental page. I forgot about that.
Oh, Facebook Get Mental page as well. Go to that as well. All right. After
where I do a live every Tuesday.
Yep. See, there you go. All right. But no, just, you know, I've just been listening to everything you've been talking about, everything that you know, some of the articles, and it's all about the positivity. It's all about, you know, really recognizing what's in front of you and destigmatizing, which is a word I used earlier, or basically not being so sensitive to everything that you see.
Right.
You know, breaking ourselves away from that. I feel that is very key because, as I said, it only takes seconds to a minute to start your day off bad. If you have, you know, look at this and you see something you don't want to see, it can just throw your whole day off. So I just thank you for, you know, some of the insight that you've given us. And man, look, check it out, people. Okay, You are so welcome. You are so welcome. Get Mental Podcast. Papillon. The butterfly. All right. All right, everybody. All right. This has been Word with Ty Brownlow. I've been your host, Ty Brownlow. Remember, no one is worthless. No story is worthless. You can follow me on all social media platforms at Word with Ty Brownlow. Or go to my website, tybrownlow.com. Get this great interview, plus other great interviews as well. And you can also go to my podcast, you know, on Anchor, on Spotify, and on Google and Apple as well. And you can also hear the audio version of this, plus other great interviews. Ms. Cecille Ahrens, I thank you for being my guest. And man, fan of the show now. Well, not a fan of the show, but you are like family to the show now. So man, anytime you're, want to come back and please, lay those words of, inspiration down on us and like open our eyes to what's going on around, please do. You're more than welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'll have to come back and give you an update.
Yes, please.
I disrupted the system.
Disruption for the positive. Disruption.
For the positive. Always for the positive.
Always for the positive, people.
Always.
All right. Word with Brownlow, people. We out. Thank you. Peace.
Thank you.